And good afternoon from Philadelphia. Frank here with yet another episode of UFO News Network Sunday. A busy week, it certainly was. Awful lot happened. Major news broadcast network coverage, continued coverage, ambush interviews, interviews on entertainment talk shows, and quite a bit happened. So let's not beat around the bush. I'm going to try to cover this in chronological order, roughly, maybe some jumping back and forth, but let's get to last Friday, a week ago Friday, which would have been the 14th. Jeremy Corbell releasing yet another video. This was basically the video of three frame grabs that he had released when he released the triangle video. This one looked, based on those grabs, to be a little bit more interesting than what I think is fairly obviously some sort of plane or drone dressed up to look like a plane with flashing nav lights. So let's take a look at this video really quick. And there it is. Finally, we see this sphere-like object. It's a better video. I can't tell what it is specifically. It doesn't look like anything that I can easily identify. Some people are saying balloon, but then when you continue to watch it, what have you got?
Pick-me kid, Rafael Peralta, passive ability to launch helo ASAP.
It's hovering there, and then we see this descent, and it seems to disappear beneath waves. The waves are reported to be about 6 feet. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell that they're that choppy. But eventually, what you'll see is this video go further down and down, or excuse me, this aircraft go further down, 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 and disappear from view. And there it goes. There it goes, and they see it too. A splash to hit the water. So there is that. So what we're seeing there doesn't necessarily jump out and say, gee, there's an advanced extraterrestrial craft there. Not sure exactly what that is. Certainly not sure it's ET. Don't know about that at all. And that brings up an article that was published on the 19th of last week. And basically, Tom Rogan over at the Washington Examiner has been a guest on the show. And basically what he was talking about was his concerns, which echoed mine, expressed here back on April 18th, that there are so many of these non-ET, we don't know exactly what they are. There could be adversarial recon aircraft of some sort. Well, he's basically echoing the same thing. I fear that Haynes may play up this factor, meaning these recon drones, to the exclusion or underplaying of the three others. And that would be incompatible with the spirit of the Senate's request and the obligation. And considering what I believe should be the second factor in the report, namely that the most compelling UFOs, those UFOs which lack conventional alternative explanation after exhausting investigation, give credible indication of being highly advanced, intelligently controlled vehicles, the government as confidence that these most important, compelling UFOs are vehicles versus amorphous things, take root in data returns, and so on and so on and so on. He's just expressing the same concerns that I am, that this report might be buried in the obviously far greater in number encounters with just sort of ordinary things that they can't specifically explain. They don't know exactly what it is, as compared to these other incidents like the Nimitz incidents, where you've got the hypersonic speeds, where you've got the incredible maneuverability, that type of thing, the things that might be advanced ET craft. That's going to get buried under sort of an avalanche of the much more ordinary, sort of mundane, earthbound explanation UFOs. So that's his concern. It was my concern too a week ago. I think it's worth bringing up. I don't think we're in the clear as far as this task force report is concerned. So just keep that in mind. However, there's also some very good reason to think that the task force is, well, at least things are moving in the right direction, no matter what is actually in the task force report. And a big event last Sunday, a week ago today, CBS went all out in terms of UFO reporting. Their CBS Sunday Morning show reported a sort of a hybrid UFO report focusing on what's been going on with all the ATIP, the UFO task force, all that. Spoke to Leslie Kean, who had obviously written that New York Times article, gave her some nice FaceTime. And also, and I thought this was pretty interesting, pretty odd, that they sort of juxtapose this situation with Avi Loeb, the Harvard astronomer, who has said that this Oumuamua UFO for a little further out in space is actually might be a UFO spacecraft itself. I thought that was kind of interesting, an interesting juxtaposition, and they actually dug up a tape. I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought this was pretty interesting because this is something that we saw a few months ago. I saw it, and I've never commented on it here. I think at the time that this came out, we were really focused on the materials FOIA release. We spent a couple shows on that and really got into that in some detail. So I kind of passed over this, but since CBS Sunday Morning brought it up, let's take a closer look at that.
All right, Jill next.
So Avi, I get a little bit pissed off when you throw the entire scientific culture under the bus, because some of us have been thinking about and building instruments to find anomalies for a very long time. And I think that when we say that if we ever are going to announce such a detection, that we require extraordinary evidence, we're doing that as a way of differentiating ourselves from the pseudoscience that is so much a part of popular culture with UFOs and all kinds of claims of things that people have detected. So
okay.
I wouldn't be so hard on the whole culture, Abby.
Well, let me explain. To your first point, I'm talking about a factor of 1,000 in funding. I'm not talking about a factor of 2 over a decade increase in funding. I'm saying there is a discrepancy by a factor of 1,000 in what needs to be the case relative to what is the case of the community that you are talking about. A factor of 1,000 is a big factor in funding. And moreover, it's even a bigger factor in bullying, because anyone that makes a suggestion in the direction of technological signature is being bullied and ridiculed.
I don't
wait a second. Let me finish. Now, my second point, which is very important, is in the Dark Ages, people used to say that the human body should not be dissected. There shouldn't be operations because it has magical powers, because there is a soul. Now, think about it. If scientists were to say, we don't want to discuss the human body until there are extraordinary evidence for something, we don't want to discuss it because of all this nonsense being said about the human body. What?
Well, that was a little bit longer piece than the small snippet they used there. So you get the idea that within the scientific community there seems to be not only an aversion to particular subjects like ET visiting us, and also there seems to be a certain you got to behave a certain way too. And I don't like Tartar's position in that particular exchange. Now, Loeb did something that threw the entire scientific community under the bus. Don't think she was in the right there at all. and appreciate Loeb standing up for himself. So I thought that was a pretty interesting exchange. Let's face it, as we go forward with this, there is going to be a lot more overlay, a lot more interlapping between science and us folks here in the UFO community. We already saw a little bit of pushback from some mainstream scientists over the last week after that 60 Minutes piece, Ryan. I'll get more to that a little bit later. But they did go out and get one of the usual suspects, of course, on the debunking side. He wasn't too harsh here today. Last Sunday, he wasn't too harsh on either side. But they did, they did get him to do the very unique double debunk. He was actually sort of debunking the UFOs on the one side and debunking Loeb's finding about the Oumuamua, whatever it was. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Now I'm going to tell. Like I said, he wasn't too bad. He wasn't too bad Sunday. He didn't put him in a bad light. He seems like an avuncular, chatty guy most of the time. Not a bad guy, but they tried him out to basically spread over the years a lot of bad information about UFOs. I didn't see anything too terrible from him last Sunday, but I will talk about a little incident that I had with him on Facebook. This is a story I've never told on the show, but I think it's worth telling in this spot, and then we'll get into the review of the 60 Minutes piece. But basically, right after the first New York Times story came out, the one written by Leslie Kean back in December of 2017, Shostak said, I'm going on Facebook Live through the SETI organization, the SETI Institute page there, and I'm going to answer questions about UFOs, and no matter how tough they are, think up your toughest question and, ask me about UFOs. So I'm on break, and this is probably, as I remember, it's a weekday. I'm on a holiday break from work, so, I'm able to do it. We get in there, and a lot of people are asking. There was a pretty good turnout, as I recall. Not thousands, but I mean it was a good turnout. And there were plenty of questions. He's got assistants there, helping go through the questions and feeding him and so on and so forth. Well, the first question I ask is, what about UFOs and radar? And it doesn't get answered. And there are a couple other people in there who were thinking along the same lines as me that also asked about UFOs and radar. So all in all, I think I asked my question twice because it didn't get answered. Somebody else did the same thing, and then somebody else was asking. So all told, he was asked 5 different questions about UFOs and radar, and he didn't answer any of them. And it's not like he was so deluged with questions. Like I said, he had a nice group in there, but there's no way that he didn't. Here was his assistant didn't see and feed him at least one question about UFOs and radar. So he dodged those questions, and I think unless you can put a camera in front of him, he's going to keep on dodging. I'm not sure what his position is. He's sort of irrelevant to the thing, but he's always. He's always one of the first guys who's called for whatever reason. This is what you see when you need an expert. An expert, sort of grounded scientist. They call this guy for whatever reason. He's not a bad guy. He's okay on TV. He's articulate and all that. But he's the first guy. The same way that a lot of people call Nick Pope when they want something pro UFO. What's going on with this UFO stuff? And Nick Pope doesn't really add anything. Hasn't really contributed anything within the field, but he's gotten himself into this position where he's recognized by TV people as a good guy to talk to on TV. And I mean, that's basically the limit of what he brings to this particular subject. He might have some, I admire the SETI work. I'm okay with the SETI work. On the SETI work, he's very, very good. And when it comes to him talking about UFOs, he's been very, very bad, and he has been for a long time. So there's that, and let's get to really the main event. Let's not beat around the bush. The main event this past week was the 60 Minutes story We knew it was coming. I think we talked about it. Was it on the last show that I mentioned that it was coming? And they did get it in before Memorial Day, before the end of the month. Looks like they probably, Graham Messick, as you can see up at the top, the producer, he was hinting around about it on Twitter a while back. So they pretty well must have had this story pretty well near done before he started dropping hints online. Because, like I say, it usually takes a little while. They probably worked this story. They probably started working this story like back in April, I would say. That would be my guess. They got it turned around pretty quick. You gotta move people around. You've got to fly here and there. You gotta gather them together. You gotta line them up. You gotta do some preliminary research. So one thing that I pointed out online is 60 Minutes undoubtedly has a lot of very good material gathered together. But unfortunately, because it's TV, what they've got to do is they've got to boil it down into a very small time frame. This show is going to go far, far longer than the 60 Minutes piece went last Sunday. 13, 14 minutes of this show. No, yeah, I don't think we've never done a show that short, and that's what they've got to do on TV. It's amazing the money, the resources, the access that they get. Because when 60 Minute calls and wants to do an interview with you, yeah, sure, you're going to do it. You're not going to tell them no, and they're going to get you to some place. They'll rent a room. If you don't want them over to your house, they've got incredible resources and money and access and influence and an audience too. Apparently, they drew about 9 million people watching live, and then maybe several million more have watched since that, including overseas. So the show has some incredible pull, and I would say, just as an overall review, considering the time constraints that they have to deal with, and basically they've got no time at all, the blink of an eye, to put a fairly complicated and nuanced story together and have it make sense for people who are listening at home. They did a good job with that. They really did. I was very impressed with that part. Did I learn anything new? Not a whole lot. I would say the one thing that I learned that was new, that I thought was interesting, was a little bit more about how Mellon and Elizondo first crossed paths while they were both still in the government. That was interesting, and that was a small little piece that I was not aware of. So again, some sort of inside baseball background. How did they meet? Was it a blind date or no? They were working on UFO stuff, and they did become aware of each other and cross paths, and that's how that happened. So that was interesting. And then, of course, again, Alex Dietrich actually appearing on camera. This was a first. We hadn't seen that before. Obviously, a couple of years ago on season 1 of Unidentified, the TTSA, Mellon Elizondo DeLong show over on History Channel, she did appear, but in shadows. So now we finally got her, and she's actually kind of gone public, as an account over on Twitter, is fielding questions and all that. So that's pretty interesting there. Everybody sort of wants to see what she thinks about this and that and the other thing. And apparently she's expressed some interest in actually learning a little bit more about the UFO stuff. So that story has changed a little bit from the beginning. She'll never come forward. She'll never speak about this to, hey, it's quite a surprise when she did the In Shadow interview on Unidentified a couple of years back, and now here she is. We see who she is. We know who she is. We knew the name. It had leaked out before. I did not focus on it here because, hey, that's what she wanted, and you can certainly respect that. I think people have the right to pursue and share information as they see fit in terms of their privacy and all that in general. And Elizondo back on there again. He certainly had a busy week. We'll get a little bit further to that. And then basically that was the 60 Minutes. Got quite a bit of attention, and deservedly so. They did, I think, a really excellent job boiling down a very complicated, nuanced story into 14 minutes that could sort of make sense to somebody coming into all this fresh. So, and the attention that it got because it didn't end there. Of course, the fact that 60 Minutes covered it got a lot of attention. That was a catalyst for a very interesting work week. So it seems like CBS has become the UFO network, at least it was for a couple days there, because Monday night, former President Barack Obama appeared on the late night show over on CBS with James Corden. And if you remember back in December, he must have some kind of arrangement. He's like the Nick Pope of CBS over there, because he's on there quite a bit. He was on with Stephen Colbert and basically did not deal with the question at all about UFOs. That's definitely further than he's gone, as far as I know, in any interview, in terms of sort of acknowledging that there are at least some unusual UFOs out there that defy explanation. So that was pretty interesting. And it was also interesting that he talked about deflecting, because late in the week on Friday, finally, somebody has actually gotten a UFO question into President Joe Biden. He's somehow managed to evade them throughout the primaries, throughout the election, and throughout the first several months of his presidency. But finally, at a press conference with the South Korean president, he was asked the question, and here is his answer, disappointing though it may be.
If you're not asking me a mean one like you usually do.
It's something interesting, I think, that has not come up. President Obama says that there is footage and records of objects in the skies, these unidentified aerial phenomenon, and he says we don't know exactly what they are. What do you think that it is?
I would ask him again. Thank you. Come on, Walt, let's go.
So there was the question, and that was the answer. He looked like he was looking to get out of there after that one as quickly as possible. He forgot to take out his earpiece as he was making his way out of the room there, and tripped up a little bit. So, yeah, that was it. It was a nice try there. The guy from Fox News, Ducey, asked, it was a good question. It was specific, but he was able to deflect it pretty quickly. Hopefully somebody else goes back to the drawing board and asks him another specific question, probably about the task force report, that type of thing. But he was able to deflect that one pretty quickly. So that's where we're at with presidents and UFOs. It wasn't a whole lot from Biden, but we did get more more than ever from Obama. He did talk a little bit more about his at least somewhat of an interest in the UFO stuff while he was president. We know that he had Hillary Clinton as his Secretary of State, and she was interested. And of course, he had John Podesta as a senior advisor. And we know how seriously interested he's been in all this over the years. So the guy Reggie didn't really dig in on that kind of background. You know, he just asked a general question about aliens, and Obama could have rebuffed it, but he did go into a little bit more detail than he has in the past. So presidents are getting asked again, so that's a good thing. It's going to stay in the news. And another group of individuals are talking about this particular subject, and that is former director-level personnel from these intelligence agencies are getting asked again, and former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper was asked this week about what's going on with the UFO stuff. So Clapper was on over at CNN, and he got asked again, and his answer is interesting, along with John Ratcliffe, who's a former DNI director, has been asked, and he's talking. Of course, he was in office. He's acknowledged, he's gotten briefed. He's seen a lot of the information that's floating around in those circles, at least the contemporary information, and some guys who've been in that situation in the past, top-level intelligence people like Woolsey over at the CIA and John Brennan. They have sort of joined this chorus now. 4 individuals with holding director level positions in the intelligence area, have gone on record and saying they're open to this. So I think that's interesting. Let's take a look at Clapper's comments.
This month, a government report is expected to be made public on the sightings of UFOs. As the former director of national intelligence, I think there have been a lot of theories about UFOs. What do you make of these revelations? What might this be? Have you seen any yourself? What do you make of this?
Well, first, I think it is kind of, there is logic to the intelligence community addressing this, since the intelligence community has a lot of practice of dealing with ambiguity and less than complete facts. And secondly, I think it's really important that whenever we witness such phenomenon, that it is recorded and documented for the future. When we may gather more information and have a better understanding of what's transpiring. Could there be life out there? Sure. As huge as the universe is, we really can't reject that possibility. So I think this is a good thing. The transparency, I expect this report will be filled with ambiguity as well. And people, depending on their leanings, will extract what they want out of this report.
How it always goes, right? Where there is ambiguity, people can pull what they want from it. But it does sound like it is, something that we haven't seen before, this type of transparency around this topic.
Yes, and I'm not sure why that is. The only reason to me, for classification would be if there's some sensitive method that data relating to so-called UFOs was collected. But other than that, I don't know why we haven't been more transparent about it in the past, and I'm part of that crime, I guess. And my former capacities were, I didn't insist on more transparency with respect to this issue.
So you've got these intel directors, these former intel directors, talking about UFOs, that they're a legitimate thing. There should be more openness on them. It seems to me that with all these guys saying largely the same thing in general, that they're still in the loop. I mean, obviously, Ratcliffe was in the job, as late as last year until Trump left office. So these guys have gotten better intel, better information than we've been getting on the outside, and they've gotten the heads up, I believe. The former guys, they're still in the loop. They still get briefed. They still hear things, and somebody's in their ear, basically telling them they might have to pivot a little bit and get a little bit more out in front in this, because they're going on TV all the time talking about other intel matters. They're acting as consultants and analysts for these various TV networks. So somebody has gotten in their ear, like I said, and basically told them that this is what it is, that this is on the way, this is coming, and better to, when you get asked about it, better to pivot a little bit than look like you're terribly behind the curve and out of the loop. So later on in the week, Senator Martin Heinrich from New Mexico, who is on the Senate Intel Committee that asks for this UFO report from the Pentagon and the intel sources as well. He was asked about it. It's very interesting. This one comes from TMZ. TMZ pretty good at the ambush interviews, so they're tracking these guys down. They're getting hold of them, and of all sources, sort of a tabloid entertainment. What's up with the latest celebrity getting arrested or doing this or that or cheating on their wives or whatever? They're the outlet that's getting. It's gotten Senator Rubio in the past, and now it got Senator Martin Heinrich earlier this week.
You're on the Intel Committee. Bigger thing to worry about, if it's a foreign government or if it's aliens.
Oh, option B, much bigger thing to worry about.
You think the aliens would be worse?
I'm not really a betting man, but the way these things operate, they certainly, you wouldn't want a human being or any living creature in something that moves that fast and changes direction that quickly.
So, based on that brief little snippet, he's basically telling you that he has seen much better evidence for these hypersonic vehicles that change on a dime in an instant, right-hand turns at supersonic speeds, that type of thing that the human body couldn't withstand. So. He's telling you that he's seen evidence, not really evidence. Obviously, it satisfies, at least in his mind, enough proof that type of thing has gone on. Don't know what the source of that is. Is it radar? Is it video? Is it some combination of the two? But I think all these guys have seen much better evidence, and maybe leading up to the point of proving it, at least in these guys' minds, that those kind of vehicles are out there, and we have captured remote sensing data on that. So there are some people, the people who know more, are pretty much saying, yeah, this is a done deal. So that's very interesting. While earlier on I talked about the sort of mundane UAPs that we've seen for the most part on video, especially the recent videos that were released. That could be anything. Who knows what that might be, or that is a plane, or that could be a balloon. We're not sure. They're not really exhibiting any of those kind of extraordinary flight characteristics, but believe that these guys have seen it. Rubio as well, Mark Warner as well, in the Senate Intelligence Committee. So that's where that is. And finally, what is the UFO subject without some good old-fashioned soap opera? And it's very interesting developments. Somewhat involving Stephen Greer and also the lawyer Daniel Sheehan, who has done some work with Greer, and also was featured rather prominently in Greer's last movie, the first third of which was basically a manifesto knocking the threat scenario regarding ET UFOs. Did a nice job of it, actually. It was the best part of the movie, and I thought he did a fair job of it. And actually, I'm on that side as far as all this. And apparently, the TTSA side has been stressing the potential threat, risks to national security, and so on and so forth from these UFOs, regardless of whether they're ET or not. But I've been against it. But I have to admit, at the same time, that the results have gotten where they've gotten, and I certainly have the right to speak out against the threat scenario. I think it's nonsense. But at the same time, you can't argue with the results. So it was a means to an end, and apparently that was acknowledged within, at least based on some of the things Sheehan's been saying over the last week. Elizondo has apparently retained Sheehan as a lawyer, and that is one of the caveats of Sheehan's continued work with Elizondo, that he's got to get away from that, and he's got to not talk about the UFOs in the threat context. It was very interesting. Elizondo appeared on the George Stephanopoulos show this Sunday morning. It was a very brief interview. He didn't really provide much, but Elizondo did steer clear of it. And some other interesting things that have happened during the last week, that Sheehan has filed an additional complaint with the Inspector General, the Inspector General's office, concerning some of the things that have been said about Elizondo from the Pentagon related to his ATIP work. He might be making some progress too, because also late in the week, the Pentagon finally acknowledged that ATIP did at least do some work related to UFOs, really kind of acknowledging the obvious and sort of correcting a rather transparent and ridiculous lie. They gain nothing from this, obviously, from doing it except making themselves look bad. But they did finally correct that. Who knows? It might be Sheehan's work behind the scenes. He had said that he had a meeting with the Inspector General coming up. This was this past Wednesday. So Sheehan is talking a little bit. He's talked about his interactions with Elizondo, about how he should get away from the threat narrative, and that if you want Sheehan to do the work for him, then you've got to change your messaging a little bit, and that we see some evidence that Sheehan might be getting some results behind the scene on Elizondo's behalf, and clearing up some of the nonsense that's been passed from the Pentagon to the public regarding his work record and duties there. And also, Elizondo didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about the threat scenario. It was rather interesting that during the interview with ABC, Stephanopoulos asked the other individual who was on there, was apparently an ABC defense analyst for them, a former Air Force colonel. He asked him about the threat scenario, and maybe Elizondo said, "Look, I'm not going to answer any questions about that." But the segment itself got short shrift, and really, compared to the other things that we've seen this week, really doesn't merit a lot of detail. But the threat scenario, this has been talked about for some time. Carol Rosen's talked about it. She worked with Werner von Braun. That did happen. Von Braun died back in the late 70s, but she has stated repeatedly that von Braun told her that at some point the military will use the extraterrestrial threat as a way of ginning up funding and so on and so forth. The NBC correspondent talked about how ridiculous that is. Well, maybe in the with the current brass and in the current situation it is, but down the road you never know what might happen. I'm reminded of Billy Mitchell back in the late 1920s. He was very much a proponent of air power and use of war back in the 20s, and the brass, they wanted to build more battleships and not aircraft carriers, and Mitchell went through a lot of heat. He ended up actually getting court-martialed over his criticism of that particular strategy, and I think history proved him right. And while the brass felt that way back then, you'd have a hard time finding the brass of today not liking any kind of new expensive aerial platform that they can get their hands on. So things can evolve over time. Yeah, that was a century ago, but keep that in mind. And let's also go back. This is the first documented piece that I'm aware of that talks about the alien, using the alien threat. So this is written by Fletcher Prouty, and there was a book called The Secret Team. Very critical of the CIA in this particular book. And in this, he talked about, well, here it goes. This is the power structure that kept the Cold War at that level of cost and intensity had been spearheaded by the Secret Team and its multinational covert operations. To wit, this is the fundamental game of the Secret Team. They have this power because they control secrecy and secret intelligence, and because they have the ability to take advantage of the most modern communication system in the world, and so on and so forth. It will be interesting to see what enemy develops in the years ahead. It appears that UFOs and aliens are being primed to fulfill that role for the future. And that was from Fletcher Prouty in 1997. And just a little bit of background on Fletcher Prouty. It's not like he's just some armchair guy who is spouting off conspiracy theories. Hang on a sec, let me pull this guy up. Prouty was the former chief of special operations for the Joint Chiefs of Staff under John F. Kennedy. Let's see some of the other things that he did. That was basically his biggest claim to fame. He was Let's see, with the creation of the Defense Intelligence Agency by Secretary Robert McNamara, he was transferred to the office to create Chief of Special Operations with the Joint Staff during 62, 63. Let's see. Well, those are major claims to fame, but he was an insider, and it's certainly that talk was clearly going around that at some point in time. So it's not completely out of hand. It's not some crazy conspiracy theory. It is, this guy heard this and this guy heard that. But it's still, at least it's coming from something close to a credible source. So we'll see how all that plays out, although I don't see that happening anytime soon. But obviously, Sheehan has also done some work on the assassination of JFK, so he's obviously well aware, proud. He has read The Secret Team, I'm sure. And he wants Elizondo to get away from that kind of threat talk and get more into the positive contact with extraterrestrials. And I have to admit, I'm on the same page with him on that. I'd like to see that happen. But again, means to an end, and you can't deny where the UFO subject is now. So that's about it for this week. Hopefully, you've gotten some insights and some things to think about. The car is not in the garage yet, and we don't know exactly how it's going to get there, which the precise streets it's going to go down. But we've got soap opera. We've got this is the greatest soap opera in the world going right about now. You got President of the United States, former presidents, directors of intel agencies, the U.S. senators, the media. Everybody's involved now. Everybody's all in, and it's going to continue to be interesting. Hopefully, it's not too interesting this coming week, because I want to kind of sit back and enjoy my holiday weekend and not have too much to do with this. But if it merits it, we'll be back next week. But probably, I would say, since I think this is building a little bit, I would say probably the first weekend in June will be the next show. But you never know. You never know. So you have a great week, everybody. I think we're in a good spot. And if you don't like exactly where things are going, you can do like me. You can just speak out about it, because you got your platforms. I've got mine, and certainly intend to keep using them. So have a great week. And if I don't talk to you between now and then, have a great holiday week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.